Before we start, I just wanted to take a brief moment to thank, first of all, to thank my ICIT colleagues for being such great colleagues. And particularly to thank all of the graduate students who worked so hard to actually make this. And of course, thanks to all of you for applying to come and coming, in fact. And we feel really happy to have had the opportunity to hear your views on what you're doing and what you're hoping to do and all of that. And I think that's essentially what this Sunday morning session is about, is sort of thinking about, okay, where do we go from here? We've heard some viewpoints, and we'll hear some more viewpoints this morning. And then at 11:30, we'll come back to discuss in general whatever issues people might feel like discussing. So today we have three presentations by, first of all, Dana Reason and Allison Johnson, then Paulo Chagas, and then Jim Harley. And first of all, I'd like to introduce to you Dana Reason from Oregon State University and Allison Johnson from Soka University, which is right here in very close to Oregon. So I'm not even going to try to summarize your abstract or anything like that. I'll just go to it.
So I guess you can find our bios online, so that if you want to check out our creds or anything.
See if we're legit.
What's that? Yes, see if we're legit. So we've heard a lot of really interesting ideas, and I think what we're going to approach today is talking about how we've implemented some sort of new changes in how we think about pedagogy and what we can offer our students. I know I'm talking to a very creative group of people, and I think that the bottom line might be is that where education might be going needs our skill sets as improvisers, as creative people, as people who make things that haven't existed before. And so I think that might be our new job, maybe a potential new frontier for us to explore. We're used to living kind of outside the margins as improvisers, right? Or music composers or electronic music composers. So this is sort of the premise of what I think we're going to touch on.
We're starting with the concept that music is personal. We think there is a very imminent interconnectedness that propels the production, the consumption, the learning of music. And this is where we are also thinking about, we're thinking a lot about Giroux's philosophies on education, in that education really needs to be made relevant in order to be critical. And it needs to be made critical in order to be made transformative. And these are the kind of environments that we're hoping to create, and that we are creating actually, where students feel included in the conversation very personally. I think when I teach a music class, one of the first things I do to introduce the students is I ask them about themselves. And I ask, what music do you listen to? And what we're trying to get at is accessing the personal right away. Really moving away from this dichotomy of, knowledge provider and knowledge receptive, and asking the students what music they listen to. Really, they do have options here. They generally tend to be either candid about it, or sometimes they're very cloaked about it.
Cloaked in the terms of, for example, like in if you've ever read Blink, Malcolm Gladwell's book, where we're thin slicing the situation. Like in this group, say we ask each other, what music do you listen to? We might feel like we're in a shared environment. It's easy to say, honestly what we're listening to. But perhaps in new environments where students are getting together for the first time, we're not really sure what they're going to say. Are they going to be honest and ready? And our job is to make them feel comfortable in the environment, to kind of have an honest conversation of where are you at musically and where do we need to go to from here.
I think at times they feel they need to be a little bit cloaked in what they listen to, and so we try to, continue to prompt them. Generally ask, when I feel this, I ask, well, what music do you hide from others? And so, what music don't you let your peers know that you listen to? And I think that what that does is this question really disarms them into engaging with the original prompt, really getting to the personal, and without this artifice.
Yeah. So the main thing is that we have three actionable points that we want to make regarding the kind of disarmament and kind of the dichotomy between kind of receiver and provider. I think we want to change that. We want to challenge those notions of what our roles are in this new paradigm of education, Are we still really that lecturer that's just kind of filling empty vessels that, because we hold things like dissertations and research that we've done? Or is it some other kind of environment that we need to start thinking about we want to create?
And I think we start, as I said, with creating the conversations, with giving these prompts, asking for back and forth. I think also we are acknowledging both the disparate and the shared points of access. And I think that even though, for example, Sophia University has some alternative kind of aspects to it, it is basically a brick and mortar traditional classroom. And so the kind of points of access they have, this face-to-face kind of learning environment, we call it this kind of generational collective.
Right, and with the generational collective, we have to remind ourselves that learning is really no longer centralized but decentralized. And I think this is what we need to think about. So we have shared culturally inscribed experiences which are heavily located in popular culture. And we're going to use popular culture as sort of our point of access today for that. It's easy to find out quickly what students' interests are.
Yes. For example, what I find in my classroom is that there's this shared artifacts as creative glimpses. What I mean by this is there's things they all share. They all tend to know the same movies. They know a lot of the same songs. And generally, they also do a lot of the same video games. They're very, very engaged in video game music and sharing this and reinscribing it and rewriting it. And for example, let's see, do we have an example? One of my students, Justin Cheng Sandoval, who's a creative artist, composer, performer, improviser, he was working with notions of nostalgia. And they really do have this very shared nostalgia, very different than my nostalgia and other people's nostalgia. And let's see, he writes about this composition uses samples from video games embedded within my own childhood memories, Star Fox, Kirby, Mario World, and combines them in a way that was meant to mimic the rigid rhythms and driving energy of these video game soundtracks. So this is nostalgia for him, to hear this. Can you parse the different games? I guess you can date yourself then. It's interesting. You talked about it in terms of he just had to quote him. He had a lot of great ideas. These sounds are familiar in one sense as their qualities and timbres evoke the low quality or small data sounds of past technology, but they also take on new qualities as manipulations such as pitch change, reverb, and equalization enhance the sound. That's what he was manipulating them. But he sees this, for him, nostalgia is the 8-bit kind of sound. They call it small data sound. Nostalgia is very different for me. And this is how they're working. They use these very experimental frameworks. The students are very adept at these 30-second sound bites, right? Grabbing things from their culture. And they live in a very remixed culture. And this is, we talk about this as kind of repurposing cultural fragments.
Mm-hmm. So this is a very familiar environment to them. And one that I think, as creative improvisers, composers, and so on, is also very familiar to ourselves in maybe the ways that the kinds of disparate types of music that we've heard. I know that I think about repurposing music at all times, and I no longer just repurpose sort of in a kind of the classical, Western classical canon way of thinking about things, or like post-1945 jazz, or the AACM's way of parsing things, or I mean, you name it. We could just go through the list of probably a lot of similar and overlapping influences here. So our job is that we already understand this way of thinking. And now we're going to connect with these generations of students that their daily lives are about these kinds of fragmented, and I'm not going to say like disengaged meaning either. I'm just saying they're fragmented, but they're very comfortable with these fragments, moving very quickly through things, and again, repurposing cultural icons, music, film, whatever you may have.
And this is what we had called generational collectives, right? They have the same shared kind of artifacts. But also in this case, we were talking about this intra-generational collective, but there's also this intergenerational kind of non-traditional classrooms, whether it's hybrid courses, online courses, or various other methods of delivery. I think you want to speak to.
Yeah, so of course we're going to talk about this new program that I developed in 2009 at Oregon State University, and we'll talk about that a little bit further down. But in the traditional environment of classroom, teacher and student kind of thing within the brick and mortar, like Allison was talking about, we tend to have a certain type of students, an age range. Okay, of course, with the economic downturn, we've seen increased numbers of people rethinking and coming back for educational purposes. And I don't think this is a boring topic. I think this is one we need to address if we're going to stay relevant here. My issue is the intergenerational. Okay, so the non-traditional student. How are we going to deal with that? And of course, my thoughts on that is through kind of, again, we'll touch on this later, but the hybridity model, right? We might just use Adobe Connect for us to talk to one another. Everything could be just completely online, the entire course. We Skype if we need directions, that kind of thing. And we can have that anonymity as well. If you don't want to really be seen, you just want to, avoid certain things that being seen might invoke, right? Sort of like ageism. If you're like the student that's coming back that's 35 or 40 and coming back for something else, and kind of retraining or regrouping, or you were always this artist and now it's time for you to actually, there's no job, so let me just be an artist anyway, right? I mean, you can make those kinds of decisions.
And I think we were looking at this educational ideas of Giroux, and he was talking about the need for teachers to develop a deconstructive practice that uncovers rather than suppresses the complex histories and interests, et cetera, et cetera. And let's move forward a little bit, I think.
Okay, so the ways that I'm saying the future was last week, that's what we're saying. Meaning, okay, in 2009 we started the Popular Music Online program. This was before USC unleashed theirs like a couple of years ago. And I said to OSU, I said, we're ahead of the curve. If you want to engage with these students, let's move forward. Let's do it quickly because it's just going to be that way for people. Well, initially they thought that the enrollment would be just this whole new generation that they've never tapped into. Turns out 50% of the people that take the online courses and the online popular music studies are actually on campus as well. So actually we have failed in terms of reaching the people that we thought we were going to reach. So there's work to be done on engaging those potential learners that are, not situated in urban contexts and so on. And of course, Oregon, there's lots of farmland, right, and fishing and all that kind of stuff up there. So people don't come into the cities to get their education.
And I think we're also looking at all these different factors, how they're engaging with these computers and mobile phones. There's a lot of research already just devoted to this concept of online learning, mobile learning as it's called, as interactive agents in the process of coming to know. We talked a little bit about Ellen de Signac. I don't know if you want to go through that or just...
Yeah.
You know what, I'd like to get to your... I think we should get to...
Okay, so here's the program. So what I'm proposing really, and I'm not alone in this, of course, there's a whole movement happening here, and we just need to be awake for it and not pretend that it's not happening, because it's really happening. So learning no longer needs to be location specific. All right, so Allison Johnson here teaches for OSU. We have Mike Gow developing a class. He's at UCSD developing a hip-hop class for us, right? We have Richard Brown, who just graduated USC, John Cage scholar and a music film scholar, and he's teaching film music for us. So these people don't have to. I have to live up in Oregon right now, but they don't, okay? And so they can work, they can be active in their field, which is very relevant. People want to see people, obviously, active in the field. So no longer do we need to be location specific. And actually, we might want to really think about what that may mean. It means that I can maybe be standing in line at, Trader Joe's and actually engaging with my professor on the phone, right? I could be checking, and I could be on a podcast. I could be on Facebook checking in with the other students that might have responded something. I could be on the discussion board while I'm actually in my life. It's not separate. Like, I don't go to school and I don't have a place. I'm actually always kind of in this continual learning environment. So I'm actually in the world of possibility at all times, if we want to think about this idealistically. And I think not only idealistically, but I think there's a practicality to it. We're all self-learners in this new environment with the interweb, right? So what do you want to say?
I think you've had great success with your program as well, and I think there's also you've been to some consortium findings.
Yeah. So here we have some serious research coming in about what it means to create distance learning programs. Okay. Again, I said you could have a hybrid model if you're not comfortable fully online. I'm pretty comfortable fully online. I think my students are really comfortable. In fact, they have almost more attention with me than they would in a large 200 hall person seating classroom, because they have access to me kind of at all times. If I go over to my email right now, and you may not like that, I mean, of course you can create boundaries around that, but there's like 20 emails waiting to have a discussion with me, or sending me something that got triggered in class or online environment.
And I think going back to their engagement with the material, they're constantly engaged. They're constantly on YouTube. They're finding new directions, new kind of avenues of this methodology that we're talking about. And you had a couple of quotes about how YouTube is very engaging for them.
Right. I think that for me too. I think that we have to think about, and we're not just the only people thinking about it, but the people that are creating kind of the textbook phenomenon. Right? We know the textbooks don't meet our needs, right? When I use the Norton, when I'm forced to use the Norton, my first disclaimer is, a lot of the people that I think ought to be in here aren't in here, and we're going to focus on those people. But you can check in on this as well. But I'm not seeing a lot of people that have done amazing things in here, so we're going to tap into that. So the thing is that the people the publishers themselves know that books are almost obsolete. Textbooks are almost obsolete. I can go open source, right? My students can get open source. We save money. We get people creating and contributing to the open source material. So it comes back to what is the new common practice, and more importantly, what is the role of the new educator? Is the new educator more of a facilitator, a resource manager, a project manager? Because the information is out there, and students are working in networks that talk to one another. So you have to find out, what is your new role? In this, I think this new, and to be here to stay kind of learning paradigm that we can either ignore and say it has no relevance to my world, and you may find yourself to be very obsolete at some point. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next presenter is Paulo Chagas from UC Riverside.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me here. So I come here close by from UC Riverside, and I saw that my CV is not on the program, so I just talk 2 minutes. So I came here from to UC Riverside from Europe. I was living 25 years in Germany and working as a freelancer composer before coming to the university. Among others, I worked 10 years on the studio of electronic music in the Radio Cologne. So my background is more new music and composition and electronic music, and also I work a lot with multimedia and did a lot of productions and opera and so a lot of stuff. So when I come here, I was very surprised because I saw that I was supposed to develop a PhD program in music and technology, and I saw that it's a very different context that I was used to. So we created PhD in 2007, I think, or 2008, started. And there's a musicology, ethnomusicology, and composition. And then in 2010, we changed the composition to digital composition, starting in fall. And so what is that? So we thought, so we need something that here it's not only related to technology, it's a broad conception of technology, and takes into account both traditional music and electroacoustic music and computer music. So also we wanted to emphasize the interdisciplinary work and the work in multimedia. And so that's not really related to a particular technology or a particular vision of technology. Is the next one? Yeah. So the cultural and social context from UCR. So it's very different actually from here. It's a multicultural environment, also very, very influenced by the immigration. It's much more poor than here also. The students have a strong background in popular music and cultural industry, and also the influence of film and Hollywood is very strong. So there is no really classical music tradition there, and also no tradition of contemporary music in the sense that experimental music, and no electroacoustic, no computer music tradition. So it's a sort of begin. So where you start when you do that. So and that's many access points that you can have, and we are trying to address these different things. So the general conception of the program is an integrative approach of technology, an integration of acoustic and electroacoustic music, so that's no really difference. We treat everything as this part of the same context. Also to encourage the connections between sound and visual art and dance. We have a department of dance there. And also one important point there is to create collaboration as a pedagogical tool. Not only that people work together, but that's the create environments where people have to work together and they have to experience what is collaborating with other artists. Because that's one thing that I really believe. I think that everything that's come great today comes from a sort of collaborative environment, because I think it is very difficult and very limited the access you can have to a creativity using technology just by yourself. I think it's very important the exchange and and create a sort of architecture where this is possible. And this is the experience that I had working so long in studios, and which basically I think the great contribution in studios in the history of music in 20th century was the fact that they create a collaborative environment where artists, composers work with technicians, with engineers, and I think this is crucial. If you don't have that, we cannot go so far, because I think what people can do individually today is very limited. And that's I think it's a challenge for universities to create that, because it's not easy to create at least in the UC system, collaborative environments in different departments, because it's not shaped for that, not structured for that. So one thing also that's important in our PhD is that we emphasize scholar activity. It's a PhD, it's not a GMA. So they have to write, they have to do research, they have to work on the scholar activity. Okay, curriculum. So our curriculum, it has that's more. We have a course on history, theory, aesthetics of electroacoustic, which cover practically everything. And then we have a course in composition, electroacoustic, and computer music. A normal course in normal seminar in composition, which is offered practically every quarter. Seminar in music analysis, and seminar. They have also to choose either seminar in musicology or in musicology. Music and bibliography is also part of the program, and a composition practical, which is to produce events on music, to produce concerts. That's the requirements. And we have a bunch of electives. One is music and semiotics. That's something that I have been doing. I teach that, and that's part of my research in music and semiotics, music and meaning. I am part of an international group on music semiotics, and I have been publishing quite a lot on that. So, and then audiovisual and multimedia composition, that's a course in composition related to these subjects. And then we have music and computer games, some that's been offered also in collaboration with the computer science program. And we have a course in music and fantasy and science fiction. This is taught by my colleague Tim Labor. And we have two courses, soundtrack composition, music and audio production. They have not been taught until now. So we have a problem that we have only two faculties until this moment. We hire a new one that will be 3 faculties next year, but we will not be able to teach all the courses because there was so few people. And okay, so then facilities and venues, what we have. So we have a sort of big studio that calls EAR's Experimental Acoustics Research Studio. That's something that I created in 2008 and is still in developing. And then we have an instructional lab that basically used more for undergrad students. It's shared with other departments, a performance lab. And there is in downtown Riverside, since 2008 or 2009, a performing arts center, which we have been collaborating with them. So, yeah, as you see, it's very limited, the number of facilities. I wish we had more. So, research topics. One thing that I've been pursuing since in trying to develop is still facing problems that I will talk a little later about that. It's sound spatialization, audiovisual composition, interdisciplinary collaboration as a research topic, and computer gaming. This is being done by Tim Labor. It's basically the main ways, that's the main topics. But there's also something maybe we could add. You saw René Lisoff. He's also from UC Riverside. He performed here. He's also working with the students, and he's developing also kind of research on sound and culture. That's also a topic I should add there. So limitations and problems. There's a lot. You see, that's the most filled slide. So we have a reduced number of faculty. I already said that. We have insufficient funds for recruiting and supporting students. This is a real big problem for us because we get a lot of applications and a lot of interest, and we cannot fund the students, so they go somewhere else. They come here, they go to UC Santa Cruz, they go to UC Santa Barbara, they go to all the UCs because they offer like 3, 4, 5 years PhD. We can offer only 2. So, and when we can offer, that's really a problem that we have. So we have underdeveloped facilities. So the students that I talk about is still in development. No technical support. The university doesn't provide any technical support. We have a very limited staff supporting. So the UC Riverside is creating clusters of administration. So limited performance opportunities and a sort of commuting mentality. So the students are not there, the faculty are not there, so it's very hard to get people together. I think you have also this problem here. I think this is a real problem, the lack of physical presence to do things. Okay, so actually I have only 2 more slides. So adjustments and challenges. One thing that I noticed that's very important that I didn't have in the beginning program is to develop recording facilities, to work with recording and also exploring new ways to distribute the music. So, and one thing that I always thought will happen to attract external funds, but this has been very hard. Developing a research profile, so that means maybe to create some kinds of very specific and very directed research topics. Collaboration with performance, I think this is very important to establish this kind of collaboration that the students can experiment things and can create with performance and reach out into the community. I think this is also important. So, and questions, I have questions here that I'd like to hear from you. So what means digital? Is there something meaning? Is there something that it's something, a sort of concept that we can operate in terms to create, to draw, to attract some kind of creativity on that? Do you really need digital composition, or should not be only composition? So it's that something that makes a difference to phrase like that. So what are the professional perspectives for the students? That, I think this is a big question. So they do that, and after that, what they besides teaching universities and becoming academic, what they can do with that. And should we prepare there for the professional market? What is the professional market? And so, and other questions that I'd like to hear from you. Okay, that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next presenter is James Harley.
Thank you, and thanks for having me here. And actually, just thank everybody who's already presented because it's been really interesting. I'm really glad I was able to come. There's a lot of ideas to think about, and hopefully we'll have some time later to talk about. So I'm going to talk sort of where we're at, where I've been, and the kind of things that I've been working through, and some possibilities that we're working towards. I'm 2004 is when I moved to the University of Guelph near Toronto in Canada, and I was at a state university in Minnesota before that, working in a music industry program, a Bachelor of Music and Music Industry, which I guess somebody was talking about, like a sort of more instrumental-based, like career-focused kind of program. And then I moved to Guelph, and where it's a Bachelor of Arts in music, which for those of you maybe who aren't so involved in curriculum, it's not the most exciting thing that we do, but it is important, as it turns out. A Bachelor of Arts means that we can only require our music students to take, actually it's a little less than half of their degree is in music. I mean, that's what we can require them to take. They may take more. But, so that has its good things and its bad aspects. And one of the difficult things is that, there's a certain element of sort of development, skill development, all of that, which we just can't, we can't build into the degree. The good side is, and I discovered when I moved there, is that the students we end up with are people who tend to have other interests besides music. Most Bachelor of Music programs are almost entirely music, so you don't actually do anything else but music, which is good for some people. Other people it's not, and so we tend to have really interesting students who maybe are doing a double major in studio art or theater or geography or whatever, and they bring that into the music area, which is quite interesting, and so we benefit from that, I think, and that's, I'd say, a good thing about a Bachelor of Arts kind of program where there's room for them to do other things. And as we've had to think through all of this, as one of the things that's happened since I've been there is that we've lost half of our faculty, which is not a good thing. And at the same time, we have like 140% more students. So the program has grown, faculty have not, and so we've had to think about that. How do we do that? How do we deal with that? And we're in the context, I guess the other thing, we're in the context of a school of fine art and music. So we have studio art people, which is a very large program. about 3 times the size of the music, and then we have an art history program as well. So we're in that context. It's so it's not a strongly performance-oriented program, which turns out to be fine, really, as we'll see. We had to go through some revisions of our curriculum because we were losing faculty. The interesting thing about that as an opportunity was that the traditional, the old guard, as you might say, were the people who were retiring. So we had an opportunity. We had to revise the curriculum. We had to get rid of some courses. We had to rethink how we were going to do everything, actually. And so we had this opportunity. When I got there, and until we went through this curriculum revision, it was essentially what students were required to do for the degree was to take musicianship and music theory, traditional music theory courses, traditional Western European music history courses, and the other stuff which we offered was electives. So we decided to change that. We had to reduce some of that because we were losing our traditional musicologists, our traditional music theorists. So what we essentially have done is kind of broaden the base of what the students do. So they all have to take these. They still take the musicianship, music theory, Western music history, but less. And then they all do take the other stuff, the music and popular culture, music, history of jazz, world music, and music and technology. And then what we have done, so that's at kind of their core requirements, and then at the upper level of this bachelor's degree, we have our seminar courses in 6 areas, I guess. One would be popular music, jazz and improvisation, actually, which is a little wider, ethnomusicology, traditional music history or analysis, and digital music, and that's 5. The other one is music pedagogy. So those are actually, they're worth 2 courses. So when a student takes it, it's really a pretty intense upper level education or focus in those areas, in one of those areas, and the topics change depending on who the teacher is and who and what the interests are. So our directive from the higher ups was that we need to be able to offer our core with our faculty without having to hire sessionals to at least teach the basic program. So we got it down to that barely, and we're able to justify having some extra instructors to do some other electives which we didn't take off the books, thank goodness, and sections of musicianship and so forth. I think it was interesting. I just mentioned this, that our new music ensemble, which had been started before I came there, it's kind of shifted. The letters stay the same. CME is what everybody calls it, but the focus of it has changed to what really is a creative music ensemble, in the sense that the focus of that ensemble, which can be as many as 20, 30 people, is improvisation and group composition. And it's not a required ensemble, but most students end up in there. Some for credit and some just for fun. And it's actually, aside from the choirs, which is a large element, the CME is actually our main ensemble now. There's still a chamber music and jazz more traditional jazz ensemble and so forth, but the CME has kind of become a flagship in a way. All students, I just mentioned this because I'm going to talk about our improvisation graduate program, which we're hoping to get going. So all of our students end up improvising one way or another. there's some of that in the choirs, there's some of that in musicianship classes, and there's a lot of that in the CME ensemble. So that's where we got to. It's been interesting being here because I think we can go further in our curriculum revision, and I think it'd be at least interesting to think about where else we could go, where we could take this further. But it's worked out well so far. And given also we have this like more students than we've ever had, and I guess there must be some reason for that. We're trying to figure that out. It helps. It really helps because we felt, I think, because we lost half of our faculty over a few years, that we thought, oh, music's on the cutting block, for the administration to save money. But I really don't feel that anymore. We're actually bigger than other departments in the College of Arts, so I think we're doing fine, but I think we can still keep thinking about what we can do with our curriculum and what the concerns are. And okay, thanks. It's sort of, when I first got there, I realized there was sort of an apologetic attitude about this Bachelor of Arts. Like, people go to Guelph to do music because they couldn't get into a music school. That was kind of the some of the attitude that we ran into at recruitment fairs and that kind of thing. But traditional music schools don't capture everybody who's interested in music. There are lots of people, in fact, and we like those students. They aren't traditional music people necessarily. We do have some of those. We have some very strong performers who also have other interests, who want to learn about something else, do another degree in history or something, or music theater or whatever. So that's been interesting for me to realize and sort of help out. It helps us to get to focus on who are we. We're not a traditional music school, and that's really okay, because what I see, at least in Canada, is the larger music schools that are kind of floundering a little bit. They realize they should change, but it's too hard for them. They're so loaded down with what they've already been doing that they can't really think too drastically. So even this curriculum revision, which was pretty major, it wouldn't be possible in other music schools that I'm aware of. They struggle with this. Because I guess we were smaller and didn't have all of that, we were able to do that, and it's pretty cool, I think. The other thing which I had put on the slide was that when I got to Guelph, it's like a research-intensive university, but we don't have a grad program. So what does that mean for music? It's kind of strange, but but we are still able to apply for grants. I got a grant to basically build a studio, which is pretty cool. And we have people who can come in and work on it, and students of various. I've had visual art, or people doing sound art using equipment, and people doing all kinds of things. Not always directly coming out of music. The other big project, which some of you know about, is this improvisation, community, and social practice research project, which actually didn't come out of music, it came out of the English department. Ajay Headley is the main director, who's also the director of the Guelph Jazz Festival. I know some of you have been there, and it's a pretty cool festival, one of the most interesting, I would say, around. And he has, for many years, had a colloquium as part of the festival, and this research project kind of came out of that. And it's a wider concept of improvisation, not just being within the music, but they have people that are in law and philosophy and all kinds of other disciplines that are part of this project. It's been going now, and it's coming up. They're actually they're applying for phase 2, which I just wanted to mention because this is one of the things we're hoping to develop. We have people who can we work with graduate study students in other disciplines at the moment. These are some of them, and we can send our students on to some of these, to depending on their particular interest, they could end up in one of these degree programs. If they really want to do performance-based kinds of work, then they're going to end up going somewhere else, which they do. The proposal that we're waiting to hear about soon, any week now, is to actually develop an institute that would be permanent, critical studies in improvisation. Okay, I'm finishing. And which is a multi-institutional, going to be a multi-institutional collaborative project. And the idea of developing a graduate program in improvisation studies is what we're working towards. Right now, there have been students doing this kind of work, but it's within the English department, which has its own kind of constraints. And what I'm particularly hoping is that we can start to have students who have more practice-based work that they want to do, not just writing a dissertation. And that is part of the proposal. And so it means that we could have music students actually going forward to work within this kind of a graduate program. And it's very interdisciplinary. It involves community work potentially, and it also means that you could draw on interesting faculty from some of the other institutions. And there are many others in this project, all including people from around here. I'm trying to think of who. Deborah Wong in Riverside, George Lipsitz in Santa Barbara. There are many people, George Lewis, and so on. So it's an interesting possibility. We're not really sure how it's going to work in the details of it, in terms of how do you have a graduate program where you have people in other cities, other countries to work with, but given that it's easy to communicate, as Dana was talking about, the online possibilities mean that you really could do this. You could have Georgina Bourne at Oxford to be one of your advisors for this kind of a program, because you could communicate with her easily. So that's interesting, and let's cross our fingers for the funding to come through, because I think this will be really interesting, not just for us, but for many people. So that's it. Thank you.
Does anyone have any question you'd like to direct to any of the speakers?
I came in late, so I didn't hear the whole first talk, but I just wanted to comment that the YouTube thing is interesting. I guess I saw that slide there. What's interesting about it to me is that the students are, of course, they live on sites like YouTube, and I found a very strange thing has happened. We have CDs of a lot of classic electroacoustic music in the library, and they don't have that. It's not part of their mentality to go to the library. And this is not necessarily a good thing. I'll give you an example. Somebody wanted to play an Album Lucia piece or something like that. They went to YouTube, they found it. Some random person had played an old LP. It was very filthy, and just put it on YouTube. And there was no image. It was just a lot of times they just put music on YouTube. So we listened to it in the class, and I was getting more and more annoyed because it sounded like shit. And I knew we had that CD in the library. And I even put in the syllabus, please try to find, real source material. So when I criticized the student politely, he said, no, I bet he added that scratchy stuff because it sounds really cool. And I realized how far we are from our students in a certain way aesthetically. Like to them, the scratchy stuff must have been intentional. It never dawned on them that the composer, Album Lucia or whoever, Mario Davidowski, killed themselves, well, maybe not Lucia, but certainly Davidowski, to get the cleanest recording they possibly could. And all the noise on the tape was, as I say, a random person. I know that because I have the perspective of those musicians from the 60s and 50s and 70s, whatever. but they really thought that this was part of the music, and so they kind of missed the point. And so what is my point? Just that my point is we are moving very fast, and not everything that's happening is good. And the disembodiment that was described yesterday by Vijay is a really tantalizing idea, but it has some dangers. For example, the fact that everything's available online with no context. Stuart Dempster, who's a wonderful musician, once said to me, what bothered him was not so much that people didn't know the tradition of whatever in world music, but they didn't know there was a tradition, which is a lot more radical sort of ignorance. And so, well, we have a challenge here. It's not just whether we're relevant or not. It's whether people understand the world around them. And then that means we are relevant, because it's our job to make sure that people do have an understanding of culture. And you don't get that from just randomly listening to snippets on the web. It takes someone like us, someone with perspective. So I actually feel that I'm more relevant than I used to be, actually. They need me. The students really need me. That's my feeling. Yeah.
David, do you have something to respond to?
Yeah, I was saying, I'm going to say that one of the ways that I kind of direct listening in the world of all that possibility, the messiness of it, is that I actually comb through YouTube and find links for people to listen to. And then furthermore, if they want an iTunes download, they could go find the piece on iTunes and encourage them to see the body of work that is available. Now, I don't get the luxury of like pointing them to like an Alvin Lucy or a Stuart Dempster album at this point, but I'm going there. I'd like to go there, right? But we can start that way. There's also the possibility, like when Michael was suggesting yesterday, in the textbooks, how we have the sidebars in the textbooks that have suggested whatever readings. It's a similar kind of protocol on YouTube, right? We got tons of suggestions on the right-hand side, right? Do you think that your student, just a question, do they just stay at that YouTube link, or do they, their eye moves over and then boom, you're in a whole new world of research potential, good or bad, or, you know?
I mean, they would click on a link. They would do that.
Yeah.
But I send them to the library. I mean, I have that option. So I send them to the library. I want them to actually look at the... Now, this may just be nostalgia on my part, because it really may be true that in another few years, no one will listen to CDs. I mean, that is possible.
Well, the OSU library doesn't have anything for me to send them to.
Oh, really?
You know, so even, that's really, I mean, it just gets reduced and reduced and reduced. I think we have a lot of Beethoven scores, but nothing much after that, really, honestly.
Wow.
I just wanted to say that the online situation, first of all, I also give them, I direct them, like, choose from these YouTube, you know, like, or I give them people that I, you know, look for these people on YouTube or whatever. But the other thing that could be really interesting with this idea of disembodiment and everything is that you create, if you have an online or hybrid online course, like what I'm trying to develop right now with my courses, which are both online and also hybrid, some of them, is to create a community in real time that is outside of the classroom. So you're saying, okay, you have a project and you have to come back to the Adobe Connect, you have to come back to the hybrid, you know, classroom or wherever it is that we're doing. With, you know, you have to go in and you have to report back these kinds of communicative things that you're doing. So you have to give them projects, like things to do, so places to go research this in this place, come back with your report with your group in your class. So they have groups within the class, and so they meet with their group, and they have a project that's outside of the classroom, and you go and you do the thing that they're supposed to do, and then you come back and report. So that's kind of the direction I'm taking, so that there's still community being developed. It's maybe not in the classroom, but you just said the classroom is maybe in Trader Joe's or whatever. So where is that classroom? So how do we as pedagogues create new forms of classrooms?
Well, it becomes experiential learning, right? It's project-based learning,
Exactly.
so it's actually taking the materials, not just digesting a lecture, but right away you're into the materials themselves.
And maybe the library, or some library that's nearby, or some place like a library, some research facility, is that project, or maybe the research facility is something else that we didn't think of before as a research facility.
Jeff is better on that.
I think part of that is, I don't know that we have to find where that community is going to build. They will figure out where it's going to happen.
And that might be a project too.
And so I was going to say, our role as teachers, I've really come to like the word instigator. I sort of feel like it's my job to wind them up and point them in the right direction. And just sort of offer, like the slot car thing, make sure they don't get too far off the track, but they really kind of run. Like they'll find it. If they're into it, they'll do it. We're there to
Provoke.
instigate, to kind of light the fire. Or, again, maybe say if you want to learn this Charlie Parker tune, the YouTube recording of the 14-year-old with the Aerosols might not be the one you want. That may be the Woody Shaw recording is the better one to check out. And, sometimes they do and don't know that. But.
Jane, did you want to respond?
So one last thing to tie up to that is the scaffolding. So maybe you have one project where you direct them, and then the next project's a little bit more free form, and the next project is like, hey, you go, here's the project, go for it. So that scaffolding thing is probably the way to go.
Jason.
I'm really intrigued with this kind of online context as well. So just I actually have two questions. I'm going to try to wrap it into one bigger one. So the online context for teaching has been around for quite a while now, so it's been evolving in all these different ways. I was really excited by your presentation because you brought in some really interesting kind of critical theory about education that isn't normally put side by side with online education. So the Giroux, for instance, I thought that was really interesting in the way.
Yeah, Alison is really thinking about that with her approach to,
the ways in which we might imagine the new kinds of agencies that are created online. Because it's sort of seems like it's the wave of the future. There are lots of places resisting it, by the way. So, like MOOCs and stuff, people are resisting as well as signing on. And when you sign on as an institution, it's kind of, you start to wonder what you get back in return. You sort of offer free content online. Anyways, that's the sort of debate at the institution I'm at. One of the things I often struggle with in the classes that I teach is this sort of creating a situation in which students can actually find that their experiences, their musical experiences, are relevant. So oftentimes in classes you say, okay, what music are you into? And they say all the things that they think you want to hear. And then you ask them, well, what do you really listen to? And I'm always shocked at how challenging it is to bring those two things together. But at the same time, one of the things that I've found is that students do arrive at our doorsteps with what I call a kind of naturalized expertise. Something about music and our culture teaches us that we are all kind of critics on a certain level. We like what we like, we dislike what we dislike. And I've found that causes a certain kind of problem in the educational situation. And I kind of agree, I think, with Andrew in a certain sense that we as I can't stand the term facilitator, but we as the teacher or whatever it is, we can help students think in new ways about what it is that they know. So I just a kind of cautionary word about creating a lot of agency for the student. I think we also need to think about what the ramifications of that might be. And then also, the idea that we as educators are facilitators in the online context, I think is a little bit dangerous. I mean, now, for-profit colleges online like DeVry are actually calling teachers facilitators and giving you content, giving you a structure to teach within.
And I agree that's dangerous. I'm not really up for that model. But I think one of the things that we might be thinking about stepping back from is that students don't want to hear a lecture for an hour on the computer. It's not really serving them. In fact, they say, can you find core and critical moments in your lecture and give them those points? And then they can go back and they can tie in by, again, other modes. Having a discussion with other students, so they might have done some of the reading, and then they're having a discourse with other people, so it's very generative. It's not all, you don't like the term facilitator, I don't know how else to say that we have to step back from the role of unidirectional, like I hold all the cards here, and I'm gonna do that to you. Because at the same time, I might not, like you're saying, your students come in, we all own music, right? That's what we started out as, music is personal. Because everyone's invested. For example, it's some sort of average of about 5 hours a day of unintentional music hits our ears. So we are surrounded, and it's not, I don't know, name your favorite composer. It's not that person, I'm pretty sure, right? So my thought is, and our thought, what do you think?
Well, I
Elsie?
think also this concept of danger, you're not going to pull curiosity. I mean, yes, you can direct them to a certain area. I just had a student last week come up to me and ask, what's better, an LP or CD? And he wasn't even really familiar with either of those forms. The sound quality, and do we keep it when we move it to CD and all this? So there's a lot of curiosity. And yes, we direct them to the library or very specific links, but you're not going to prevent them from 90% of the time clicking on other links or listening to other things. You're not going to stop that. So I don't think there's a danger there. Yes, there's clear strategies for directing them.
If I could just add one thing to that, it sounds like, this is exciting to me as well, because it sounds like this is the older, small discussion format-based kind of context for teaching and learning. That's common at a place like where I teach, this idea that we have small classes, it's discussion-based, experience-based on that level. And I think that might be a little bit different than the kind of crowdsourcing model that, I don't think you guys were meaning it this way, but this sort of lurking in the shadows.
Well, there's all different levels of the MOOCs, and whether it's from the student-centered ideas or the teacher-centered ideas. It's a new idea. You have to explore it further. But we're not going to stop it.
But stepping back too, I mean, we already have like high schools that are online. Like people are calibrated, right? We're thinking it's different, but actually they're coming up when this is normal. This is the new normal. And so we have to get used to what the new normal is looking like in the eyes of the next generation of undergrads and graduate students coming in. I really like the idea of a graduate program where everyone is kind of globally situated. And we come in and we have seminars. I mean, this is where I'm thinking. We have seminars on Adobe or whatever. We create our own universes this way. We share through that lens. And then maybe, we decide we're having a festival. And everyone's going to congregate for the festival. I mean, you get very personal very quickly with students online because they seem to they're very open and ready to discuss things with you. In a way that, for example, when I teach like lecture style, it takes a long time. I mean, there might be your core 3 people that come at you all the time, and then everyone else is kind of hanging back. The online model allows that shy person that things are happening in their brain, but they're just not in this not kind of the right learning environment for them. So that's the other side of this. We have new ways of presenting, Howard Gardner's ways of how people learn, right? In a certain way. I mean, I think it's fresh and I think it's interesting, and it's probably the most excited I've felt about what education might be, despite the naysayers. And I think, the junky stuff will fall away, right? Just the stuff that really has no integrity, right? Well, we're not going to really provide that ourselves, I don't think, in this room, anyway. So that's just something for thinking about.
I may just exercise moderator's prerogative to throw in a couple of points of information. I was at a seminar given by Apple Computer recently, where somebody talked about some, pretty hardcore research they've been doing on educational methods. And a couple of the takeaways that I took from it was, first of all, one of the lessons they said they learned was, if you're lecturing to your students on one topic for an hour, you've lost them. You've lost them after 10 minutes. And you've probably all had the experience of, I covered that in the first 3 weeks of class. You don't remember now in week 8? So you never quite know who's taking what away from any sort of lecture situation. But what this person was trying to convey is that really, from their studies, they find that people just do have different attention spans. It's just an irrefutable fact. And if you want to ignore that, you do so at your own peril in terms of teaching. So in this model of presenting information to people, diversity of topics, moving quickly from one topic to another, maybe, finding new ways to integrate multiple topics and bring them around to each other is important. And also, diversity of media, the way that you present things. Go to a video, go to an audio recording, but don't stay on the one method of delivery for the same period. In terms of sort of this, I'm not sure I'm totally down with the term democratization of education, because I just think it's a misnomer in a sense. And one of the things that I notice in a popular conception of democracy is that everyone's entitled to their opinion equals all opinions are equal. And it's not really true in my opinion. There are people who know more about things than others, and that's maybe where the teacher comes in. You can create a situation where you're setting students to do their own research, and you can have a sort of seminar format where you say, here's the research I'd like you to go out and undertake. And then they become more informed citizens in the seminar setting, and then you can have a really lively discussion.
And I think it's taking VJ's point again, starting with an empathetic classroom to begin with. Okay, so we're going to honor, maybe everyone's entitled to their opinion. What is it where we want them to end up at the end of the class? For example, if I were to say, introducing them to like prepared piano techniques. In this generation, if I play Planet of the Apes for them, not the more recent one, but I could play the more recent one, right, with color and is it Danny Elfman or whatever. Then step back, go to Jerry Goldsmith, and have the opening of prepared piano. We're image driven, right, as learners now too, right? So they see that, they hear that, like prepared piano. Then I go and I play one of the sonatas for them, right? And I'm like, well, I just connected in John Cage with them, who they never listened to probably in a million years, and now they tied it into pop culture, and now they can they're not dismissing it right off the top. I gave them something that was out of their comfort zone, but maybe they will own that kind of information and have a curiosity after that, maybe. I can't guarantee it, but I will try.
David.
And in that interactive, empathetic environment, I think what we have to do is accept the fact that all of this is happening. We're going to have no influence on it except to participate in it. And remember that every form of media that has ever existed is actually still here. It's like going to Venice. Boardwalk, every fashion that's ever happened. I even know somebody who's working with wax cylinders. Really, I'm serious, today. They just changed their role in society, so in culture. So we figure out what to do about it. I've got a CD coming out, but I can't stop the company from wanting to bring it out on vinyl first. Well, and look to be successful, we have to be super creative in the classroom, in that environment, and look for that, what people call the teachable moment. So the noisy, the scratchy stuff on Alvin's recording. So you bring in a sample of record scratches. You bring in a pristine recording. You have surreptitiously you have a mixer underneath your desk, and you mix them together. And then you say, and what about this? And then you take it out, and then you discuss what's the difference. And then you play an MP3 version, and then you play a high-res version, and you start talking about what does media mean? This was on my mind because Lou Reed was at Cal Arts recently, and he was giving, and I got him to sit down in the seminar with the students. Believe me, that was an interesting thing to happen. And every time the students would ask him a question, he would only answer with one form of answer, and that was how bad MP3s are. What did you have for breakfast? MP3s. We go on and on and on. Well, you can pick up those things, and you can turn it into a learning experience. So now make a piece with different resolutions of things, and what do you learn about that? What does it mean? So.
Can I touch on one last thing?
Sure, yeah.
Because I think this
let's call this the last thing, then. That would be great.
Because we live in the time of corporatization of education, right? It's happening. We're all having these sorts of meetings and cutbacks, and I'm hearing people don't have faculty to get the job done. And I think that one thing to think about, not that I want it like it's a sales pitch, but definitely think about this. Real estate is expensive. So when you hire a new hire that has a location, you have to find a place for them to teach that class. And the economics of that is something that the university can shut down very quickly. When you go online, and of course now there's systems. At Oregon State, we're 4th in the nation for online education right now because they are invested in it. So we have a whole department of distance learning people, experts that are up on the new technologies, ways of presenting the material. And they work with the departments and the professors and things like that. They want this. They want to try. The schools know they need to do this. They send the funding to those places, distance learning. For us to get this, the popular music program off the ground, so we did the prototype of the minor, then they want the major. It was a $50,000 grant to get that to go. So they infused the little program with some cash flow, which allowed me to hire people and get the courses developed, right? Nothing came out of the music department's budget. In fact, what happened, is the music department started seeing an infusion of cash like they'd never seen before. Because the students were hungry for this and they wanted to have sort of their back core fulfilled, all that stuff, you know, on their own time. Music's fun to a lot of people, right? So it's like fun time, and I get to listen to a lot of music, and I bought the Dr. Dre headphones, and I'm at home and I'm doing my thing, right? And what I can tell you is this. That amount of money, which the department has never ever seen in the history of the music department, because you know music departments live on scant budgets, usually, has allowed like sending, I don't know, the choir to China, or sending the wind ensemble to Japan. They were never able to do things like this before. So it's a tremendous service for people that, you know, take music maybe very, very, very seriously, and then it's not taking any income away from the departmental budget. And it's creating more opportunities for diverse teaching faculty, right? Like you're saying, Georgina Bourne, right? You can have Georgina Bourne teach a seminar for the term. I mean, upper division, there you go, right? And it's something that you can budget for. So that's the economics of this. And I think, unfortunately, most universities are looking at that precisely because of the economics of it. But I think it's much more than that. And I think creative people, and our job is to make it such so that it's a very vibrant and integral part of learning. So, something to say.
Thank you.
Thank you all.